Good morning, Nicole.
Good morning.
Good morning. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday, Keisha. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm glad it's Friday. Can't wait till 5:30.
Mm, no, I
Get
know.
my weekend started.
Oh, yes. Hi, Nicole Lamb. She must be still working.
Yeah, she might be muted because I kind of spoke and she didn't hear me either. Oh, she said, "Can you?" Oh, she said, "Good morning."
Hello, Anthony.
Good morning. How are you all?
Doing well.
Good, good, good.
Morning.
Good
Good
morning.
morning, Samantha.
Good morning. It's good to see you.
Good
Morning, everybody.
Good
morning.
morning, Katie.
Good morning.
Morning, Colin.
Good morning, everyone. Keisha, I don't think we reached quorum, right?
We need one more,
Okay.
either Reverend Vaughn or Sharita.
Text Reverend Vaughn.
Sharita is actually scheduled to present, so we're expecting her, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, Nicole.
Keisha Reverend Vaughn is joining now. It's coming.
We are officially at quorum at 10:03.
Okay. Happy Friday, everyone. So excited to have our executive meeting. Welcome to February, the love month. So we're going to show love as we partner together to help support our most vulnerable population in Durham. So welcome, everyone. So glad that you're here. We have a packed agenda today. So let's get started and make the most of our time together. So first, we're going to move to the approval of minutes. And so December 6th minutes will be approved at the next executive committee meeting. Everyone should have received the executive committee meeting minutes for Friday, January 31st. Are there any edits or corrections? I take the silence as a no. We'll open the floor to make a motion to approve the minutes for January 31st.
Madam Chair, so moved to approve the minutes of January.
Thank you, Reverend Vaughn. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Ms. Colleen, thank you. So next on the agenda is the 10th policy update for Sharita. Has she here yet?
She hasn't joined as of yet.
Haven't heard get on yet. I texted her a second ago.
Okay.
I haven't heard back. Second.
Okay, I just called Sharita. She is logging in. With the motion, we need to vote. Yes, thank you, Ms. Colleen. Can we please vote to approve the minute for January 31st? Vote yes in the chat, no, or abstain. Thank you, Ms. Colleen.
These are the minutes for January 3rd.
January 30th. Yes.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, okay.
It passes. can't tell if Sharita has joined.
She just joined. I'll let her
Okay.
know.
Thank
Okay.
you. We'll give her a moment. Appreciate your patience. Okay, Sharita, we're gonna turn it over to you for your tent policy update.
Good morning. I didn't realize you guys were at me already. I do apologize for the delay. I had a patient I had to attend to this morning, and came right at the worst moment. But nonetheless, so we had a listening session on the Friday, the 31st of January, and we had a working session on Wednesday, the 5th of February. I want to say that we had a good turnout for our listening session. I think the highest number was maybe 50 persons in attendance, 51 or so persons in attendance. We also got some written feedback from 33 of those participants. And we even had persons present or represented from other city entities like General Services and Durham One Call that I thought was phenomenal. So we can kind of hear their perspectives as we work to develop a tent distribution policy in Durham. There is a document. I don't know if we have uploaded that document. Keisha, did we upload the document to any of our COC pages?
Are you referring to the 21-page tent policy document?
Yes.
No, it hasn't been uploaded. I need the electronic version of it. I have to-
Okay.
Okay,
I'll make sure that we get that to you.
Okay.
Our facilitator, Dr. Rachel Battle, did a phenomenal job in her facilitation thus far. We have scheduled a follow-up vetting session for the draft policy. It will be 10 a.m. on Friday, February the 21st via Zoom. We hope to have a draft policy, the policy that we plan to present to the HSAC in the HSAC meeting on the 26th, but we wanted to allow the body that helped us with the development of it to vet it one more time, vet it, the document before we forward it on to the full HSAC for further kind of vetting and development of that policy. I don't know if anybody has any questions. We will definitely try to get that 21-page document uploaded to our site for folks who are just interested in kind of seeing that information. I think Dr. Battle had to make a couple modifications to that document. So I was hoping to have it this morning, but for whatever reason I don't. I will follow up with Dr. Battle later today. And we hope to get that document uploaded so that if community at large wants to kind of see the process thus far, they'll be able to do so. Thank you.
Okay. Do we have any questions for Sharita?
I'd just like to give her a shout out. I think the effort to organize and really listen and ensure that all voices were heard, as well as the follow-up working session, were both very good and necessary. And I will say that one key highlight of the working session was this invitation and opportunity for all of us to envision a city, county, world where tents wouldn't be necessary because services would be plentiful for the people needing this type of help. And that was a heartfelt moment for me. And to listen at some of the creativity that came forth through that invitation gave a lot of pause. You know, those of us that are sort of entrenched in the fight every day can lose sight of, you know, the vision of what we're really working toward and trying to create. And I think that working session really did that very well. So I want to give a kudos to Sharita and Dr. Battle and Ms. Herbert and everybody who had a hand in pulling all of that together. And I think it's going to result in a much more inclusive and informed outcome in terms of the document. So thank you.
The only thing that I was remiss in adding to this discussion is that on Monday policy and planning meeting, whatever beginnings of a draft, my hope is to have that in hand. So if anybody is interested in kind of seeing the process as the document evolves, I will extend that invitation to policy and planning to be there so that you can see kind of what we have and also have the ability to impact the further development of that draft. So don't forget, plug for policy and planning on Monday, 10:30 to 12 on Zoom.
Okay. Thank you so much, Sharita. We have 15 more minutes for Sharita's portion. Are there any more questions? Any comments? Thank you for your work, Sharita.
Can we get the agenda in chat?
Sure.
Just because I can't find it. I've gotten so many emails in the midst of this distribution policy, I can't.
I don't think you want my agenda. It has some
I'll
minutes
drop
on
it.
Thank you.
Okay, 10 policy update. I think someone was saying something.
Ms. Colleen, I think I saw her unmute.
No, I just said Colin, it was there. I put it in.
Oh,
Thank you, ma'am.
thank you. I'm trying to think. I was just trying to think if it was anything I failed to mention. There was so I will say there was some very good discussion, and I think one of the things other things that we heard loud and clear, especially from our general services and our one call person, was if there is this need for them to have a tent removed, not having a place for the tents to be moved to, which has opened up another discussion that I feel like go in tandem with the tent distribution policy, and which is this idea of encampment and sanctioned encampment. So I just want to also kind of add that that is something that will be discussed, Madam Chair, in our discussion, in addition to exigent need request on the policy and planning agenda for Monday. So if anybody wants to, be a part of not just looking at the tent policy, but also kind of hearing some of the other concerns and needs that we identified in this between the listening session and the work meeting, please, please, please be in attendance at policy and planning.
Okay. Thank you. Again, I want to open the floor for any comments, questions. If not, I'll move the 11 minutes to the next section. Want to pause? Update my timer. Okay, we're going to move to the sorry. Well, no, update my timer. We're going to move to item number 4, the review of the short-term immediate recommendation provided by the pre-housing subcommittee, housing task force. And so I wanted to start with the housing task force group has requested that I sign the short-term immediate recommendations. As chair, I wanted to first discuss these recommendations with the executive team, similar to how I approached the ask for 2.5 to the city and the county. Eliza has shared the 41-page document with me and the executive team, and we have been asked to review it for today's open discussion. So at this time, we will begin with the recommendation. The exec team have already received the documents. Yes, okay. And so we'll just open up the floor for our open discussion. And at any time we have any questions, someone, Eliza or someone from her team will be able to ask or answer our questions. Okay, we can start with you, Sharita.
So I do have a question. So my question is around how we got to this place where you're signing the short-term needs document from the pre-housing group. I don't think I understood that that's what we were signing. Like I have seen the minutes from that full HSAC meeting, but it was a lot going on at that time, and I just don't know if I realized that that was part of the vote. I don't know if any of my counterparts feel that way, but I didn't realize that was what was happening. And what I thought was happening with the pre-housing group was that because they were empowered by other representatives outside of the HSAC to move an issue forward, I thought that was like a request in tandem with our request and not necessarily a HSAC specific request. So I don't know. I don't even know how to frame this, 'cause I've never been in a position like this. I just kind of want to say that I didn't realize that that was what was happening. I didn't even think that it was something that was warranted, because I believe that that group had been given a task that was going to be executed outside of HSAC.
I would just like to interject, there were 2 motions made at that December 18th meeting concerning that item. So Eliza made the motion. If she wants to elaborate, she can feel free to do so.
I think it could be helpful if you have the motions that were given to read them. Because I think my understanding of what was read is maybe different than Sheree, or what was shared and what was voted on is maybe different. So I'm not sure. My response, I think, may include something that was not said at that meeting and voted on. So do you have the language specifically that we voted on with you, Keisha, that you could read out? So I think if we're trying to clarify, I don't think it would be fair for me to do that without sharing those words and then getting back to, I think, Sharita's point. So that would be helpful.
Sharita, do you have those up? Because I have to look for them. I scanned them out to the executive
I'm
team.
looking as well.
I've got so many emails. Give me 1 second.
I'm looking as well.
I mean, but I think I read the minutes. So once I read the minutes and I said, oh, that's what happened. What I'm saying is that in the actual meeting, I didn't realize. I thought we were voting on the fiscal year 26 document. I did not, because I just didn't understand that. So I just wanted to just bring that to the attention of the body, for record, I don't know what we do beyond that, because I don't want to steer us away from being able to review what has been submitted to us. I'm just saying I did not realize that that was something that we were voting on. But I'm doing my best to try to find these minutes.
I think I
Okay.
remember, I looked at the minutes as well. And I think the coordination was that Eliza was bringing this information to us, and I think I'm I'm the culprit in that I made the motion. But I do agree that there is a little bit of I think in my own mind, I had a kind of a different idea as well. I think I was thinking that we were talking about specifically the information that was presented. I didn't realize that it would evolve into acceptance of the 41-page document. So I may be the culprit in some of this as well.
I have the language pulled up.
Okay,
There
thank
were
you.
two motions made, and I'll just read them from the actual minutes. And I'd just like to say that these minutes were made from the actual recording. The motion wasn't clear, so it is paraphrased, but it speaks to the essence of what was said. So I'll read both motions and I'll read what they were seconded on motion and approved. Motion 1. Eliza Matthew made a motion for the HSAC to approve for the Policy and Planning Committee to move forward in preparing the funding request letter to elected officials of the city and county to include additional information at a later date to be signed by the HSAC Chair Ross upon completion. Motion second by Reverend Vaughn, and the motion carries. The second motion reads, Eliza Matthew made a motion for Chair Ross to sign HSAC on in support of the crisis recommendation of the Pre-Housing Shelter Committee of the Joint Housing Task Force, with the understanding of overlaps to be ironed out in the future. Motion was seconded by Reverend Vaughn. Motion carries. And I pulled that directly from the recording, and it is uploaded on YouTube.
Okay, thank you, Keisha.
And I'm going to drop the written version of it in the chat.
Go ahead, Eliza.
Thank you. I'm just thinking about context in this moment. So there's a lot going on in the world, and we just finished talking about the tent policy. So, and distribution policy. So I just wanted to name that this happened before the big meeting, the work meeting that council has where the tent distribution policy came up. The work started also before 2 weeks ago when we had a presidential change. And I think in the moment, as we think about crisis, this is positioned differently if we don't know that context. So I just want to name that. And the last thing I'll name around context is the conversation that happened before these motions was a conversation that included HSAC members asking for more detail to be a part of the budget request. And what I'm remembering, I've not gone back and watched that meeting, is questions around what can we do right now? And so I'm remembering that motion came after trying to understand if there were opportunities to include additional items to respond to what can we do right now. And so from before that, I think there were some questions posed around, can HSAC be a part of that? Can policy and planning be a part of that? And then it came to where we are with this motion. And I think I asked a lot of questions with the intent of understanding how to respond to that. So I just want to offer that context to this conversation so that these motions come along with those pieces as well. And the last thing I will also say is I dropped these motions in the chat before saying them out loud. And it seemed like folks felt like this was a resolution. And from what I'm remembering, it was a unanimous vote. So I didn't receive feedback from HSAC members afterwards around confusion. And in the future, if that's the case, I think it's really helpful to receive that feedback sooner, or so that we can iron out those details and get clarity. So just want to name those things as context.
So, Madam Chair, can I?
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah, it's been a lot going on. I absolutely agree with that. Oh gosh, I just lost all of my thoughts. And you might have to come back to me because I lost it all. Lots been going on. Oh, there it is. Gotcha. So the first time I heard about this group was somewhere between December and January, the pre-housing task force. Prior to that, I didn't really know anything about the group, right? And then definitely I didn't know any of the inner workings of any of it until I got this document from you, Eliza. So I just didn't know anything about it, right? So it just like came out of nowhere for me to get this, because I didn't know that this kind of in-depth work was happening, and I really wish that we could have worked on this in a different way. With that being said, just in my perusing of the document, are we ready to talk about that, Madam Chair?
Sure.
I think a lot of the things and a lot of the conversations that we've had in HSAC and in policy and planning are represented in the document. So, I don't have any, like, I definitely think that we need flexible housing subsidies. I definitely feel like we need more diversion dollars into our system. There's been this, I feel like a full-on support for HSAC to do some strategic planning work. I do, personally really feel like, from a health perspective, we really do need to do our respite care in a different way, because even the model that we have now still has hoops depending on how debilitated a person is and how long it's going to take to get them to income to like resolve their homelessness. So like those things for me, I feel like are consistent with the conversations we've had in policy and planning and the conversations we've had in HSAC. There are some things I was surprised not to see in this document, like a sanction encampment request. In terms of these medium and long-term solutions, while I think we have also talked about all of these wishes, the safe parking lot, I'm a great proponent of that. Having some kind of unsheltered, safe place for people to be. I've definitely heard, not just my voice, but other people at the table doing it. But I feel like in light of the need for a strategic plan, some of those things, I would not have expected to see in this proposal, just because I feel like they are part of a greater strategic plan process, specifically speaking to our people living in homelessness and talking about what they need. Because I think, we see a lot of things happen in the world and we see projects work, nationally, and we are very eager to like move towards those things. And while I think it's great for us to do that, we also need to look at what the realities and the needs and what our clients directly in Durham County, what they feel like their needs are. And I feel like a strategic plan and us making sure that we have a robust effort to get information from people living, walking, sleeping, breathing homelessness every day is going to be vital to how we develop those medium-term, long-term solutions that I feel like will be viable and utilized. You know, because we also go back and constantly hear a lot of stuff about how many of the um the emergency shelter beds, white flatbreads go unused. I worked in in a medical clinic. I work with lots of people who are traumatized and have PTSD who will not engage in the shelter. I think over the years of my involvement with HSAC, we've talked about the lack of diversity as far as emergency housing solutions. But I also know that there have been many instances when the RFPs go out, we don't always get those creative outside of the box proposals in front of us to fund, right? That are realistic, that meet all of the evaluation type criteria when they're being reviewed and things like that. So just in recapping, I do feel like items B, C, D, E, and I would propose a F as well. And plan to like have a carry on of the discussion of those things in policy and planning on Monday's meeting. So that's kind of where I live as far as what's being proposed between the pilots and the immediate response. But then I think one of the unique experiences that I bring to the body and the continuum is that I've been sitting here for a long time, whether I was on the HSAC or outside the HSAC and just going to like a SAID meeting. So I've seen the evolution of our system over time. And I feel like there's some areas in the document where we could work it to be more accurate of what we've done in the past. Like, for example, have an example. Where's my example?
Sharita, while you're looking for your example, Eliza, is there anything that you want to share with all of that, with respond to what Sharita has mentioned so far?
Just that I appreciate the feedback. I would say that you said there was not a sanctioned encampment option. The expanding shelter options, those pieces don't use that language, but could be implemented in the way a sanctioned encampment would be. I'm hearing like more time to think about things. So I also wanted to offer like, we brought these options forward. They're presented as options in the package. I think they're also presented as options to you all. So I think I'm kind of hearing there's a misunderstanding. I'm feeling like I'm hearing we don't want to move this forward in a way that gets sent toward elected officials. That's okay. But I also want to bring forward, y'all have the ability to say, this is an option and this is an option that we feel like we could move forward now, while these other things we want to talk about more in policy and planning. And this material is helpful, but we can use it to build upon because there's more things we can add. So I just don't want it to feel
I think that's what I was kind of saying, what you just said.
Yeah, I'm happy I heard you correctly. I just want to offer that this is not like a black and white request. And I think there are options, but also like it is okay if y'all decide, like the original motion was the ability to sign on, and it's okay if that is a no, like y'all have that power to do that. I just want to also offer that it is not a yes or a no if y'all are interested in some of those in between conversations. That's all.
Before I go to Reverend Vaughn, Sharita, did you get all your thoughts?
No,
You're
I
looking for
can't find
something.
the example. I must have wrote it on an extra piece of paper that's not in front of me right now because I've been like really trying to read this thing. So
Well, while you're looking for that, I'll move to Reverend Vaughn.
I was just thinking as we were reading the document as well, we did actually address the strategic planning piece. It did come from HSAC. So that part I'm definitely in agreement with, making sure that we have more voices, that we have expanded, that we have a consistent process going forward that will allow us to bring some synergy across all of these different groups that are working. One of the questions I had though with the appointment of the Housing Task Force, did that actually arise, Eliza, through city county? Was that a city county initiative that was put forward by who, the mayor?
Yes, it's a joint initiative across city, county, and DPS schools. They're appointed people, and then as a part of the pre-housing shelter group, there's kind of been an open, folks have brought other people. The first couple sessions, we said who else needs to be in the room. So if there is interest, like Sharita, if you're interested in being in that group and representing the clinic, we're happy to add more folks to that group. I will say we did not start really diving into this 40-page document until we had this motion from HSAC that felt like we could really dive in deep. And what we were hearing is from elected officials was we need examples. We need to really understand this. We've got new folks as county commissioners. How does this also serve as a tool to understand landscape? Again, this is a different period of time, because now I think when you say crisis, there's a lot of things that feel like they're a crisis. So, and we are really moving into medium and long-term recommendations now and thinking upstream solutions cross three different subcommittees that exist within the 0 to 30% AMI. So there'll be those conversations moving forward, and maybe a few more related to the pre-housing shelter specific group. We're meeting this coming week to kind of understand the time we have left and how to really center around some strategic conversations that include the work of homelessness, but will include work across those 3 subcommittees, which extends beyond that.
Yeah, so I think my question is, are these meetings open to the larger community? It just seems like since we're I don't think we all understood based on the conversation and the review of the document, what we were actually doing. I think it's great to be able to collaborate and move forward, but I'm just wondering if there could be a little bit more integration. I guess Ebony is on the committee. Sharita has a different perspective. Others may want to be a part that are also part of HSAC. It just seems like it would be a great opportunity to kind of bring us a little bit closer in. Do you agree with that?
When you say us, who are you saying?
Well, I was just thinking HSAC in general. I noticed there are a lot of people from HSAC that are part of your committee, but
yeah, so I think the purpose of the task force is to bring together folks that represent organizations. So I think that's why you're seeing HSAC members or COC members. So if individuals are interested, that's great. I think particularly in these short-term pieces, it felt essential to bring this to HSAC and to say, this is only going to elected officials in this way if there's agreement. And from where I was sitting, it felt like from that meeting that there was unanimous agreement. So now I'm hearing that differently. So moving forward, the way that this document has aligned so directly to HSAC will look different.
I see.
And so I would be happy for individuals to join. I don't have the authority to connect to an official subcommittee, I think I'd have to talk to the task force lead on that. But I think if individuals on HSAC are interested, I'd be happy to add them to upcoming meetings. And we have them in person, and I've done that as folks have reached out or people in the space have invited others or asked for others to be in the space.
Sharita.
So can you tell us the three subcommittees of the task force?
Actually saying 6.
Sure, there's a
Well,
lot of
because yes, there's a lot of like language in
Yeah.
this document that like I need a glossary because like I was trying to figure out who was who. You get what I'm saying? Like, because
Sure.
there are parts where you meant like there's something a con. What's the con plan? What's the con plan? Can anybody tell me what that is? Like, so I was like really confused because I was trying to figure out.
Sharita,
Sharita.
I think Colin's going to answer your question about the con plan.
Gotcha.
So the con plan is a consolidated plan
Consolidated plan.
that
Okay,
the
now I know
city
what
has
it
to
is.
complete every 5 years related to all HUD entitlement money. So that's our ESG money, community development block grant money, home money, and HOPWA money. And then we also talk a little bit in that con plan about additional money that might be leveraged with that. So it's kind of a little bit of a strategic, for lack of a better term, it's a very high level strategic 5-year spending plan that's given to HUD. And then each year there's an annual action plan that gets put into place on how that year's allocation of those entitlement funds from HUD will be spent. And it came up in work session yesterday about, sort of how do we get more voices involved in being part of that consolidated plan. And there is a procurement going out for a consultant to help write the con plan that begins for 2025 to 2026. Or not 2025 to 2026, 25 to 30. It's a 5-year con plan. And that's a piece where we'll be working with that consultant to make sure more voices are heard and more listening sessions are taken in to sort of develop where and how that money gets spent.
I just had never seen it referred to it as that. Like when you said consolidated plan, I was like, oh, okay, I know what that is. But
Yep.
when I saw it in this document, I was like, what is the con plan? So I kept going back trying to find like a description or something in there. But you mentioned like there were three subcommittees that would be working closely together or overlapping on some of the issues. You spoke about the evolution. Right now it feels like we have 2 HSACs. It's kind of how I feel about like what's happening right now. And that can be wrong, and that could be based on just the fact that I didn't understand the task force in the inception. And so now I'm like, when you say there are 3 subcommittees, I'm trying to figure out how they align with HSAC, how they impact HSAC, how they influence HSAC, how they work in conjunction with HSAC, like trying to wrap my mind around like the organizational kind of charting of this, so I have some clarity.
Sure. So it is much bigger than those 3 committees. The charge of this is across all housing work in Durham. The inception of this is that we're out of housing bond dollars and we don't have a housing strategy, not just in homelessness, but across. And so there are committees that are talking about the 0 to 30% space, the 30 to 60% space, and the 80% and up space. I was a part of initial conversations around this work, and some of the conversations around housing was not including the pipeline from homelessness to housing units. So we wanted to make sure that was included in the broader conversation. So there's actually 5 or 6 subcommittees across those 3 buckets. So there's 3 in the 0 to 30% bucket. I believe there's 1 in the 30 to 60%, one in the 80% and up, and then another one that is kind of across all committees thinking about land use. And so it's a really wide frame of work. We were tasked with short, medium, and long-term recommendations. These are recommendations that elected officials are asking as three bodies who are interested in continuing conversations together around housing rather than separately, because they recognize the need for a unified approach. So that's where this is coming from. So the other 30% units are pieces are a group looking at supportive services and another group looking at subsidy. But not all of those are 0 to 30% folks does not all represent people that are formally or have lived experience with homelessness. So that is where I'm saying this work, yes, I agree with you, is aligned to HSAC, which is from my perspective, why that motion was important and why we started that work after getting approval. I'm hearing today that several executive team folks either felt like it wasn't well described in the moment or misunderstood and voted away that they wouldn't. So I'm just going to say again, like, there is an opportunity to say no, thank you for these. We'll keep working on this in policy and planning, and this is a helpful document across the board. And there's an opportunity to say yes to some things that feel in alignment and helpful to the current landscape from y'all's perspective. So yeah, I just want to offer that again.
Okay. So thank you, Eliza. So the exec team, I know Sharita mentioned, I wrote down some notes when you were talking. I know you mentioned part B, C, D, and F that you would like to be a part of policy and planning. Ms. Colleen, Reverend Vaughn, is there anything that stands out to you that we think that we can agree on, or something that you, or anything that not F, sorry. So B, C, D. All right.
B, C, D, and E.
B,
And then
C,
I
D,
think
and
I
E.
would propose to add another one because I feel like sanction encampment should live in there somewhere.
Okay, plus sanction.
Because I feel like some of the pilot ideas can't happen without an identified space. So I feel like that should be a request that is made, and is the plan, and the plan is to have that very discussion in policy and planning on Monday. Because do you understand what I'm saying, Eliza?
Yeah, I think some of these solutions are getting ahead of where y'all are. And so that's exactly why it's good to say that, and then we can pull it. I think the other thing to think about is like the strategy on this document is that we're not doing a presentation. It's just an elevation of here's some things to talk about at the higher level. So I have stood pretty firmly in it's important for elected officials and city and county managers to have conversations because some of this work does need more conversation. And so it is natural that you're saying the same thing at HSAC. I just want to name that that's the same thing that we're saying to elected officials, kind of responding to the questions that came up at the December joint city county meeting around what can we do right now. When the HSAC budget was presented, folks were asking, well, what can we do right now? The conversation we had at HSAC again came up, what can we do right now? And it, from my perspective, and I'm hearing it from others, it did not feel that way. So I want to honor that. It felt like there was an avenue to offer a response to that was in alignment with HSAC. That was my with HSAC members and the vote. That was my understanding, but I am hearing now that y'all feel differently, and that's okay.
Eliza, I actually, to lend some context, I was at that December 10th meeting when Colin made that presentation. And so there was a recommendation. Well, there were quite a few questions, as you stated. I just think that perhaps maybe we are trying to make sure that we're all on the same page moving forward. So the letter that well, let me ask Colin a question. Colin, you made that presentation. We had subsequent discussion at the HSAC meeting. Are you feeling that this piece that we would be signing on would be that additional information that was requested at the December 10th meeting?
So
Just to make clear.
let me try and think how to express this. The questions that were being asked by the elected officials, it took me a minute to kind of get my head wrapped around. The elected officials are used to seeing an end result that gets to them in the form of a contract that has all the details worked out, how much money, who's doing it, who's getting served, and for what period of time. And we're in the meeting in December, we're at the very beginning stages of what is the, for lack of a better term, what is the intervention or what is the bucket in a general theme, not a who's doing what yet, because we're trying to figure out how much money could we put in a bucket for FY26, because this was only about the FY26, because we had heard that we needed to get something to the elected officials by mid-January to get into the budget cycle on time. So that was the big piece. Second piece is, yes, are there things that people have said are needed immediately? Yes. And with the immediate needs, there are challenges to getting some of the immediate needs met, but that's a whole other issue, just in terms of capacity and provider pieces. But looking at where we were, the elected officials tend to be used to seeing the end result, and we're really at stage one of figuring out how much money, what are the types of things we want to spend the money on. Then the next stage would be going through some form of procurement process, which would put out the money in those buckets and allowing responses. The document that came back looks like these would be the responses to an RFP with here's how much money we would want to do X, Y, and Z, but there hasn't been that middle step of here's the questions and here's the money allocated. It's like we've got the answers before the question was formally asked. So now it's a matter of if money's awarded, you would go through a procurement process. Those types of proposals could be perhaps cut and pasted right back into a procurement process. And if those were the selected vendors, then a contract could go into place. Most of the things in this would be very difficult. I'm not going to say impossible. There's very few things that could be stood up in less than 3 months just because of the contracting time frame that it would take to do. Even if you waived all rules and went straight through, you've got several month process. And then once you had that, then the question is how fast, as soon as somebody had that money, could they do it? So that's kind of where it is. So yes, it does answer a lot of bigger questions on the end result of a procurement process.
Let me
It
also
does provide
ask
some
you.
examples of things that could be done in that space.
Okay. Let me also ask about the follow-up to the strategic plan that was mentioned at HSAC. Where are we on that? Did we actually move that piece? I think there was something about the contracting or the RFP was supposed to move. Yeah.
Great question. So that's a piece where we have money sort of in the Forever Home Durham budget for technical assistance that can be used for that strategic plan. We also have to do a procurement for a HOPWA needs assessment and strategic plan. So the two scopes of work are similar for totally different pieces from a city point. So we would be putting that together. Right now, we've got several interventions right now that have to be addressed. Unsheltered Coordinating Agency, Coordinated Tree with Diversion, and White Flag are all three contracts that end June 30th. So as a team, we're trying to get those RFPs out the door first because we don't want to lapse in those services. And when those RFPs go out, we'll draft and work with the HSAC because it was clear HSAC needs to be part of that process of what should be in the scope of work, part of evaluating the responses that come back from the RFPs and working our way through that process. And that RFP would come out on the tails of the services piece. We didn't want a gap in services to happen and to ensure that we have that continuation of services.
Okay,
And
I think
I
that
know we have-
alignment is there for that. Okay.
we have about 3 minutes left in our meeting. I want to kind of wrap up our discussion. Russ, I'm going to give you a moment to speak. I'm going to just ask everybody if they don't mind, could we just have an extra 15 minutes added on to our meeting, and we'll end around 11:15, 11:20. I just want to put that out there. So Russ, go ahead and give you opportunity to speak.
Sure. On the context piece, and I was involved in the development of this task force, and I think Eliza's touched on it well. But I think it's illustrative of some of the challenges that we've had, and I want to speak to this because I want to say, well, many of us have been looking to see change in HSAC structure, HSAC function, and these pieces. And I remember somebody saying, hope's only hope if there's data supporting that something might change. And I've been made very hopeful by this work around the tents. At the same time, part of the reason why task force like this come about is because we're half a decade into the structure that we have, half a decade into the management of the lead agency that we have, half a decade into the leadership of planning and policy. And oftentimes we have struggled to get things through. We have struggled to have conversations, and Sri and I have interacted at different times when ideas would come and how it like relates back to planning and policy. So some of why this does exist is because there's like pent up energy to see things move forward and change. And while it's wonderful that we're finding this way, and Sri, I'm really, really loving this structure and how this conversation around tents is going. And I apologize I missed Wednesday because I would love to have seen that. And I've heard good things. But it's also a bit of an indictment of where we are, that the main thing we're ending up talking about is tents. It has to be talked about, I get it, but that we've not had this space over these years. And even now, when we've asked about a strat plan, what Colin is citing is an RFP to be controlled potentially by the city, maybe pushed toward HUD needs, when part of what we've asked for is something broader, public-private partnership. There's money already on the table. There's other partners that want to come in to be a part of it. So I just want to acknowledge that part of the context here is that there is this pent-up energy, and extraordinary conversations started happening with this task force that I don't think anybody intended, because people are wanting to have that space. I think the tent thing following on some of that is a hopeful sign, but I just think we need to name that there have been attempts to work on structure, and it's felt like it's been blocked. There's been attempts to, find ways to do different planning, and it feels like it's been dragged, and we're in year 9 of not having a strat plan. I'll just leave it there. I'm seeing encouraging signs, but sometimes why these things happen to the side is that the system we have is giving us results that may not be getting us where we need.
Sounds like you're ready to step up, Russ.
We have continued to offer support, and we have got connections ready to go. I mean, it's just, I will say, I mean, when we talked about governance pieces last year, and we brought in a group that like did research and gave us options, a lot of the pushback from leadership was, well, the electeds don't want, well, all the electeds are saying they want to change. Steve Schul prompted a change review back in 2019, and then COVID happened. But there was this sense of, well, if we make change, and I'm Sharita, if I don't mind, I hope you don't mind me saying, I mean, you were one who pushed back and said, nothing's going to change if we change things. And like, it's actually probably truer that you're not going to get different results by doing the same thing. Like I said, I'm encouraged by the tent conversation, but also a little heartbroken that the content of the discussion is tense when there's so many other pieces, but it's a good place to start. Don't get me wrong.
I just wanted to allow a moment to pause. There's a lot to take in. Ms. Colleen, is there anything that you want to add? We have about 9 more minutes.
Madam
this
Chair,
discussion.
I think our meeting's supposed to go to 11:30.
Yes.
I'm in agreement. I don't think Pastor Vaughn said that, but did you also mention it? But I know I'm in agreement about the strategic plan as is indicated in the document, as well as there being some funding for entry point. And for there to be some flexible housing subsidies, absolutely. Yeah, as a result of what happened with the bond. I can agree about the medical respite as well, just having an understanding of that.
So what it sounds like to me, what I'm hearing is there are some things that needed to be revamped in the letter or in the proposal. Well, I don't want to speak for Reverend Vaughn. Is there anything you wanted to add? Sorry. Give you
No, you
opportunity.
go
Can I
for it.
can I ask a question?
Sure, go ahead.
So Eliza and task force pre-housing folks, I think I just want to thank you for all the work and the energy and all of that you have put into this document. I think at the end of the day, my question is, and maybe Eliza, you're the person to answer it. The task force was given a charge. They have asked for HSAC endorsement. What's the responsibility of HSAC as it pertains to the strategies and interventions of, it's probably not the best word, but based on the things that you submitted. Like, will this task force like exist into eternity and continue to do this work, or whatever the task force does then becomes HSAC's to execute? Like, so I'm just trying to figure out where the responsibility lies, because depending on how that's answered, I think that would impact how we respond. In terms of the comment about collaborative work, I'm hoping that it will become more collaborative, because for me, it just seems like two separate entities. And so I'm trying to figure out how the collaboration will meld itself and feed into both this task force responsibilities and HSAC responsibilities, so that it's another pathway for us to gain information, insight, and know what HSAC needs to do from a community perspective in the future.
I'm gonna start with your second one because that one's most upfront in my mind. This is a recommendations that go to elected officials. I do not expect across short, medium, and long, across all those committees, there's going to be some recommendations that align with different entities and bodies. It's up to the elected officials to implement. HSAC is a body that advises elected officials. And And then I think that there is some things that are under the purview of HSAC. And from my understanding, those are federal and state funds. There's several programs that community development as a staff with another hat that they wear implement on behalf of city work. So I am not clear, like if currently as HSAC sits, there could be things that elected officials decide they want to move forward that impact the work of community development and the homeless team, but not HSAC. There are other things that if HSAC changes in structure and they now have a wider range of purview around, you know, maybe offering feedback around things that are homeless team related, but not under purview of HSAC right now, then maybe it would be. But in the current structure, there are certain contracts that HSAC does not have purview over because the dollars are local dollars. So I think that's where there's a little bit of questioning for me, like if there's changing, like maybe yes, but in the grand scheme of things, that's where I feel like the relationship is similar but different. And then your first question, I'm sorry, can you remind me of the first one? I've lost it.
I think I was asking the question like, what is HSAC's responsibility to
Thank
the
you.
work that is that this body has developed? Yeah.
So this body is done with its work, hopefully in May. And so everything in this document, we've said, if they could just, elected officials could get this from us and they could decide, this is really helpful for context, we're not funding any of it. Maybe in the future. If they decide to fund something, that could be something that is talked about at HSAC. And we've recommended that that is, if there's discussions that need to continue around those things, that it would continue under HSAC in policy and planning. Because the work of this group is finishing, and we felt like with what I thought was an alignment at that December meeting, that made sense.
Mhm.
Does that answer your question, Sharita? Reverend
Yes.
Bond, did you have a question? I'm
I
sorry,
didn't
go ahead,
have a
Colin.
question. I just have a comment. I
Okay, go ahead.
too appreciate the work that's been done and the coordination. I think it's important. I think some of the things that we've suffered from and we've talked about are the disparate, you know, the different silos of different things that are happening. So I think the communication and synergy is important to what we're doing and to respond to what I haven't been around for all these years. But we do need to be able to act on the immediacies. So I do see the point. I see the need for there to be that coordination and synchronization and all of that. And I hope that we'll be able to move forward.
Okay.
To Eliza's point, I do want to clarify. Yes, HSAC is the one who makes official recommendations on the HUD funds. Community development, you know, obviously we put out the unsheltered coordinating agency, which was something that goes way back to right before I started. And that was something that came out of the cleaning up of an encampment that was on state property. The coordinated entry with diversion contract, that's city funded as well. And part of that is tied to HUD requires us to have a coordinated entry system. And while the city funds part of that coordinated entry program, the county also puts resources into it. The county also puts resources into the unsheltered coordinating agency. One of the things that we don't talk about much is all of the other stuff that our non-HUD hat on the community development homeless team. We've got multiple contracts that are out with multiple vendors, and we as a team have struggled with capacity, freely admit it. We've gotten behind on invoice processing. Everybody in our system has struggled at some point, and we've still have some organizations, I'm not saying all, but we do have organizations that are currently need a lot of technical assistance to be able to get into compliance with the contracts they currently have. So these are things that come into consideration when you're pushing for money to move forward. We have to have an infrastructure in place to absorb that money and be able to deploy it, staff up, get contracts. We've got vendors that are a year or more behind on sending invoices to the city. We've got people who are struggling with best practices. We've got a lot of challenges that, and this takes time from us as community development, is going out and having to do the technical assistance and say, hey, what do we need to do to get this contract going? Or we have to start canceling contracts. But if you start canceling contracts, we have to have a provider that we can transfer it to. And right now, that's part of our challenge is we have only a limited number of homeless service providers in our continuum that have limited capacity. And the work we do is hard. It's hard to find staff. It's hard to find this. And these are things that we have to be thinking through, that we could put out all the money we want. When we had $2 million of ESG COVID funds, it was tough to absorb all of that money into the system and get it spent within 3 years. So these are things just to be thinking of as we're looking at it, is we have to be realistic. Yes, we want all this stuff, but we also have to have an infrastructure in place to be able to absorb the money, use the money, and make the changes that we want happening. It's not all, it's a partnership of all of us working together. And, now we're finally, I'm gonna knock on wood that nobody leaves my team, but we finally have a full team, and also, to be able to help catch up on all those things. So it's a call for all of us to sort of come back together, say, okay, where do we need to go? How do we do this going forward? And looking at what are the needs and what is the actual capacity of our system to be able to do this, and how do we attract new providers to the system to help us move these goals and projects forward. Because without some of this, we may struggle for a while.
Colin, I have a question for you, and forgive me if everyone else knows the answer to this and I'm the only one that doesn't. But because HSAC made the 2.5 million ask and the task force is now asking, will the city be able to fund both?
I don't know. That's a city council. That's an elected official budget question.
Okay.
The request that we put forth from HSAC, the $2.4 million request, was based on some analysis based on our team and what we saw would be a reasonable amount of money that could be reasonably put into the system, and expected that it would get spent within, a reasonable period of time, and wouldn't be sitting there with, oh, wait, we can't staff up this fast. Oh, we can't. So it was trying to, what could the system realistically handle based on experience of what we've seen and where contracts are currently getting spent. So that 2.4 million comes from that. If the city and county fund both of these, I think it's going to take, my personal opinion, based on just history, is it's going to take some period of time to be able to get all of that money fully spent and fully up and operationalized. It's not stuff, like a lot of these projects aren't things that are just going to be able to stand up tomorrow if the money were put into a contract tomorrow. Some of this requires, how do we tie it back into a coordinated entry system? How do we tie these together so that we have a well thought out plan of how it gets used? And that's the next step of this is, okay, money gets funded. Now, who's accessing these services? We already have a rough idea of, well, this would be for this group. Okay, how do we operationalize that? Now that needs to go back to coordinated entry to figure out, okay, here's the referral process. Now, do we have the back end infrastructure to make sure all these referrals happen and we're tracking and making sure people have access and we can work it through a system that makes sense? And I'm not saying the system we have is perfect. There's always room for improvement. But that's all part of the whole process here, is making sure you've got an infrastructure to handle the pieces moving forward.
Okay. I'll go to Eliza, then Reverend Vaughn, and then I think I saw a question in the chat.
just really quickly wanted to name in these documents, I think ideally all of them would be funded, right? But we recognize that that capacity would be crazy to try to do all of that. So I just want to name that there's not an expectation with these options that all of them would be funded. It's more of, here are some things that could make a difference, elevating them up. And then I think then elected officials have more of a menu to understand those pieces, and also strategically making sure that city and county managers have eyes and can have those conversations around capacity and what else they would need behind the scenes. So just wanted to name that. It's in no way is there an expectation that everything that gets elevated would get funded. And there's actually some language in the document that says, we don't think that's a good idea. And I would say even now, more of a not good idea because of where we're at and those changes that we're seeing in our community.
Yeah, I think my question, I was listening to what you were saying, Russ, and wondering, since there's this kind of frustration, I guess, out there, are there other streams of funding that is being sought or potentially identified that would not come through the city-county route to address some of these needs?
Yes, but part of the issue, I assume that's a question to me.
Yeah.
Part of the issue is having a plan. I mean, that's been a consistent. I've heard council members say, gosh, it feels like stuff comes to us and it's like from the left, from the right, from the middle, because there's not a plan. And if we have a plan, it is far easier to have a public-private partnership. I mean, when this was originally designed, I believe it was meant to look and feel like a public-private partnership. And I believe it was meant to advise city council and the commissioners. We have largely been advisory group to the functioning of the lead agency without necessarily having the ability to provide accountability and support for the lead agency. I mean, we've not done any, all the agencies are regularly reviewed. I don't remember any point we've had a chance to provide feedback in any formal way for the functioning of the lead agency. There are groups, I mean, there's foundations and things ready to partner and would love for it to be a comprehensive plan that has multiple partners in it. And we've been saying that off and on for a while.
And then Sharita, you can go next. I saw you unmute. No, I was Eliza, then Sharita.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
That's okay. Go ahead.
Just quickly, because we're talking about funders, I'm going to take my HSAC hat off and put my Duke hat on and say it is really hard for funders to fund things when city and county is not having conversations about the needs. So a really easy example is that entry point diversion dollars are out. It's really hard for me to take that, and I won't take it and move it forward internally if city and county is not looking at why did we run out? How do we infuse dollars? And is there an opportunity for a partnership? I can't move that and say the money is out, let's do something, if city and county is not also having that conversation. And I think that's like really granular and simple. But if you think about that in other ways, what ends up happening is foundations and institutions don't want to fill the gap where the governing bodies of that work should really be doing that work. But there's an ability to partner when there are conversations around here's how we're going to get there. I think that's strategic planning. And specifically, that's one that I think is low-hanging fruit in some ways, but is a great example of like where those intersections can get a little bit twisted in terms of like ability or not ability to do something.
Sharita.
Oh my gosh, that was a lot of stuff. And so it makes me like come up with all these questions, and I promise you I don't have time to answer you all the questions that that I have between in this conversation. So I've been back in my home community in Durham doing homeless work since 2011. I have sat on and have the opportunity to sit on many boards and working groups that are intersect with housing and have their niches. I have seen like the side groups come in and do different things, and I just feel like the way that we do things in our city sometimes is a waste of resources, manpower, and time. It is not efficient. I think, we need to figure out how to not create more silos of groups of people who feel like they are doing the thing that the system is missing, and how we make them, have some central places where all of that energy and effort comes into the body to create these other things. I feel like we lose our value, our reach, and our progress because we have a tendency in Durham to do this. That's my opinion. I've seen it happen in almost every work group that I've sat in, and I've sat in some of those extra work groups trying to figure out, well, why am I sitting here when that group is doing this? And how can these people, just these few people that are different, like work together so as to get past this place? And we keep sitting in the same place because we keep spreading ourselves out wider on the who has the best solutions instead of figuring out how we come together to progress us forward. My hope is that we can stop doing that as a city, as a county, that we can figure out how to truly work together, be collaborative. It's one thing to say we're collaborative and to act totally different. And I see that happen a lot. And at the end of the day, and y'all know I'm big on this, my allegiance is not to any organization. My allegiance is not to HSAC. My allegiance and the work that I do is for those people that are outside. That's my charge and my responsibility. And I just wish that we could get to a place as a community where we do better by the people that we serve, because all of the side stuff, it causes a lot of confusion, and it takes our eye off of the thing that matters, and we get behind. And I think that that's the reason why we are in this place that we're in right now.
Thank you. Are there any more comments or questions? Based on my understanding and what I'm hearing, we are asking for Appendix B, C, D, F. And I don't want to speak for you, Reverend Vaughn. I know what you mentioned, Ms. Colleen. So at any time, step in, Reverend Vaughn, and say, that's not what I'm saying.
Ebony, I think it was BCDE.
E, yes.
Okay.
B, C, D, E, to be connected or fleshed out through policy and planning. Also with the sanctioned encampment is also a part of that. Reverend Vaughn, am I omitting any of your thoughts?
Yes, that's fine with me.
Okay.
When you say be connected, can you clarify? I'm understanding that to be this document is something that group will move forward with and continue conversations.
Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying. So yes, thank you. Yes, that this document will be, along with those appendix, will be ongoing conversation within policy and planning. Go ahead.
That I'm happy for that to happen. I think I just want to name something for the future that would be helpful as an HSAC member. Often we talk about the crisis and what we can do now. I'm hearing this was not the thing to do now. So when we say those things at HSAC, if we could have more clarity around what we're
But
looking for, that would be really helpful.
I don't think that the team, and again, I don't want to speak for them, so y'all jump in at any time. I don't think the team is saying that it's not an emergency now. I think they're saying that we have to have a process of how we get the information, flush out the information, and come up with a plan for the information. Is that what I don't want to speak for Reverend Bond or Miss Colleen or Sharita. So please unmute and jump in at any time. Is this what you're saying?
Correct, correct. From my perspective, yes.
Are y'all frozen?
Yeah, because I was gonna say, we're not saying don't do this.
So Eliza, I don't think none of us are saying that we're not saying we don't do. I think that we're saying that the first portion of this document we are in support of. We feel like those are things we need to move on, and that what we want to do is further develop those things out in policy and planning for a exigent need request in the very near future to city and county government.
Okay.
Is there a recommended timeline from the task force that they would like to see something go out?
I have heard we are already late. They're thinking about next budget cycle. So I think as this continues to be flushed out, the elected officials are going to receive it, the city county manager are going to receive it and say next fiscal year. So that's just what I've heard. And I also, I think there are a lot of layers to like other things that have happened outside of this work, as I referenced earlier, that play into that as well. Like I think city and county are thinking about federal money really differently than they were when this was created. And I think I'm of the mentality, and this is why I started this way, is that fear can distract us from the main purpose. And I don't want this bunched up into that rhetoric. Is like, that's not why this came forward. But it is something that's a reality for our community and many communities across the US.
Are there any other questions or concerns?
I will just taking off the COC hat and putting on the city hat. Any exigent requests that would be, i.e. amending a current contract or doing a no compete contract. There could be challenges if there are significant performance issues or delays in invoicing where it's hard for for us to be able to verify information that is being shared. So just letting you know that we could advocate, and at the end of the day, money might not be able to be put where it needs to go due to other issues. And I'll just leave it at that right now. And like I said, we're working with all of our partner agencies that we have contracts with to get everybody in good standing and compliance with things.
What does that mean, Colin? What you just said about exigent requests?
The urgent needs. If you have like a mid-year budget request, and if a group is if somebody says we need money for X, and that group, an organization is not in compliance with the current contract or is significantly delayed in invoicing, which makes it impossible for us to verify funds are spent or not spent. Or if, exits to permanent housing is a goal and you're significantly behind on that goal, it makes it very difficult to say, yes, let's go put more money into an underperforming organization. Not to say you can't do it, but especially if you've got a group that, if you've got people who are 6, 8, 10, 12, 18 months behind in invoicing. Well, when it gets to a contracting phase, somebody's going to go in from budget or the finance department. They're going to be like, it looks like there's $700,000 or $1 million sitting here. What do you mean it's out of money? So there has to be, paperwork being able to show that, yes, all these invoices are in, we have them, we're processing them, and yes, that is correct. If you've got groups who are behind in, if a contract says 30% of people should be exiting to permanent housing and you got 10% of people exiting to permanent housing, okay, how is adding more money to a group that can't do the basics with what they have? How is that going to help? This is the challenge that you get into where you have to be able to defend to elected bodies. Why are you giving money to a group that isn't able to do this? Granted, and I'll own it, we've been behind on our end of things, and we're working with everybody to try and get there. These are just some of the hurdles that we have to jump through to make some of these things a reality.
I saw Eliza come off mute and raise her hand. I saw Russ. Did you change your minds with responding? I wanted to give you opportunity.
I just say, as a task force, it's been hard to understand the nuance between what Colin is sharing. And it's really hard for me to hear the reason we can't bring forward an option that serves people is because of a financial piece of the city. And I think there's an opportunity.
It's
I
not.
don't think that's what he said.
That's not what I said. What I said is we have vendors who, if I go in and pull a contract and I go look in the city system, they have $1 million they could draw from the city contract. So it's impossible to say you're out of money when it's like you as an organization
It's
haven't
both
sent 8 months of
ways.
invoices.
It sounds like it's both ways. Is that true?
Is what true? Like
It is both ways. So I said city, and what I really meant was the financial side that the city sees, not that it's on the city.
okay, yes.
So
So
the both sides issue.
and the compliance with current contracts. So if you have a compliance issue with a current contract, it makes it difficult to justify adding that. That's all I'm saying.
Sure. So I think what's hard to hear is that we know we have a need.
Mm-hmm.
Know that people could use support in some of these ways, maybe not all of them.
Mm-hmm.
There's a system and a process that's going to stop us from putting more money, whether it's because invoices are behind one way or the other. I think it's been really difficult to understand that from the task force side. And so that's, again, exactly why we said, here's some options. If this option is of interest to you, I trust that our city, county manager, and our elected officials could look at those systems and choose something different if they wanted. But they will not do that if they don't have the opportunity to see the option. And so I think that's where I've felt like illuminating options and trusting that people can ask good questions and make smart decisions could offer a different opportunity. So I apologize for saying city earlier. What I meant was the city process, and that it's been hard to distill. When is it a capacity thing on the city side? When is it a capacity thing on the nonprofit side? And that has just not been really unclear in HSAC and also through this housing task force process.
We can, if the executive committee wanted to, we could try and figure out a way to do a presentation on sort of how that works, or where, like a status update on those. But I don't want to get too far into that, because that, gets into a lot of weeds on a lot of contracts that anyway, we can talk about that. It might be performance management.
But I think this is part of redesign at some point, because it feels like there's this information floating in the background that is protecting agencies. And we've had periods, I'll be the first to say, where we got very behind, but we also very regularly experience. I mean, we maintain an internal list of what haven't we submitted and what has the city had that they haven't responded to. We're sitting right now waiting for stuff from the last fiscal year of the city that's now being tracked down. And so it's if the city hosting the lead agency has these capacity issues, when we've tripled the size of the team, there must still be something wrong. And it may not be within the lead agency, but in the support systems around the lead agency. And so, I mean, just how we get some of this information out so we can make these adjustments, because I mean, we're quick to report when we're underspent on COC pieces, which is good, but some of these other pieces, if they're really affecting stuff, and to find a way that, you know, I mean, I got this survey from Carolina a few months ago where one of their questions about COCs across state was like, do you have a way that the leadership of the agencies get together and talk with each other about the challenges they're having? Well, no, I mean, because we're supposed to kind of go through the lead agency, and then we're having the struggles that you're describing.
Well, I would hope that you would come to the body of the HSAC and share those challenges, because the HSAC can't respond if we don't know that there's a problem.
But
And I
Reverend-
think
if you
Reverend
don't
Vaughn.
trust, but if
Reverend
the
Vaughn.
system is not functioning in a way that it feels like it's a safe, workable place to do that, you're going to have to, we end up finding other ways to do it. That was my point earlier. Like, I understand that you want us to all come through HSAC, but the current design is not, it's not conducive to what we dream of happening.
Reverend Vaughn. Ebony has dropped
Oh,
off. Can you assume
okay.
responsibility of convening this conversation, please? Thank you.
Oh, okay.
She's rejoining soon.
Oh, okay, thank you. I was going to I had my hand up because I was going to ask a question, maybe that could help solve some of these issues. Is an expansion of the number of providers, and you had mentioned, I think Russ, you had wanted to know why it is that Wake can stand up these emergency shelters and locally funded supportive housing programs so quickly. And then there was the response about the difference between our provider level. There's also, I've been questioned, like I said, I've been on HSAC for several years, but I do get questioned about those type of issues from community members in the organizations in which I belong, especially the faith-based, the churches and other entities that want to get more information. So it sounds like we do have an opportunity to answer a lot of different types of questions as to how things function and how it is that we can make things better. Looks like we are out of time. I believe that's what everyone is saying. I don't know if we're waiting for Ebony to rejoin us. Eliza, you had your hand.
Yeah, just
Are you
want to
waiting?
wrap us up. I'm hearing that B, C, D, E, and F are things that policy and planning want to keep talking about. As y'all do that, and I want y'all to feel free to use this work as is helpful. I would really appreciate if you would honor the member list of the folks that put that together if y'all choose to move anything forward. I think that I want to really honor that folks did a lot of this work over the holidays and the weekends and the nights, because there was a understanding from that group that there was alignment with HSAC, and that's why that happened. So as y'all move that forward, if you all use some of that work to elevate it within HSAC to elected officials, I would ask that you honor those individuals by including their names. I have talked to everybody on that list and they were comfortable with having their name on that. And I just want to make sure that that work, that we're giving them credit for that work.
Ebony is rejoining now.
Oh, great.
Okay.
I apologize. I lost internet connection and I had to register like 7 times to get back here. So I apologize.
No worries.
What did I
I think we're about ready to wrap.
miss? Okay.
Into
We're
on
moving
the
to
agenda
the
creation.
And then
Okay, can I
Ebony, you and I
make
can work on, if it's amenable to the executive committee, Ebony and I can take the HSAC agenda and work it out and send it to executive committee if that would be amenable to the exec committee. For just the HSAC agenda portion. That's it, just sort of planning the meeting.
Okay. Jeffrey has a closing comment. Go ahead, Jeffrey.
I will say this, I generally stay quiet in these settings and let these matters play out. I do live in Wake County. I recently purchased a home in Wake, my first home. I lived in Durham, could not afford it, could find something in Durham, so I ended up in Wake. But I've been working for 25 years in the Wake continuum. The structure is different there. They're able to stand up shelters quicker there because of the collaboration with county and city. County owns or is in charge of the shelter there. They are also more heavily influenced from the top down, as in they resolve to do something and then they work out the challenges along the way. But the resolve is already there from the beginning. We are going to do this, and then they deal with the challenges. I'm encouraged that we're having these conversations. I live in Wake, but my heart is in Durham. My mother graduated there from Central for her bachelor's and for her master's. My brother and his wife met, married, and raised 7 sons after having met at Duke and graduating from there. They got married at Mount Zion in Durham. So although I live here, I'm a triangle baby. So I am encouraged by the conversations. These are some difficult conversations to have as we look to moving forward. I see that we all have the same goal, and I share what Sharita said. It really struck my heart because that has always been my resolve, is that I am not, I'm a city employee. My check says City of Durham, but my first loyalty is to people who are on the street. And that is because I was one twice. I have just bought my first home, but in 2010 and 2013, I was homeless. So this is near and dear to my heart as I watch these processes move forward. I'm again, sometimes a little anxious at some of the conversations, but I'm encouraged that they're happening at this point. I just want to say that I want to congratulate everybody for what they are doing. There are a lot of challenges that we have, but there's also a lot of wins that we have had. And I think that it is also important to focus on the wins. We have brought a new agency on board, Family Promise of the Triangle, so much so that they changed their name from Family Promise of Wake to Family Promise of the Triangle. They are interested, invested in coming forward. Anthony's working on recruiting for the COC. So those efforts are happening. We need more agencies because we need more capacity. That is not to say that the agencies that are already functioning aren't doing a good job. There are challenges at the agency level. There are challenges at the city level as we do this. There is still a shortage in the labor market. So that is not to say that agencies are not trying or that the city is not trying. It was a challenge getting hired, but it has happened. So I just want to encourage everyone and say to continue to do what we are doing, continue having the hard conversations, because as a Christian, I'll say this, iron sharpens iron, and we need to continue to have these hard conversations and know that they are for the greater good and for the people that we're servicing. So I'll close with that.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Exec team, are you okay with the proposal that Colin mentioned about us meeting together and getting the agenda to you? Ladies, are you okay with that?
Yes.
Okay. All hearts and minds are clear. I make a motion to end our executive meeting.
Are you making a motion? Do I need to second it? I second.
Okay. Have a great weekend, everyone.
Take care.
Well,
Thank you.
take care.
Thanks, Ebony.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye, everyone.